And now for our feature presentation.
You're listening to the JB and Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
Puts it up. Yes! There goes Davis. Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. American Soul is finally the one. American Soul has won the Triple Crown. Bonds hit way high. It's a deep. It is and the Tigers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw.
Here are your hosts, Jamie Bradford and Darren Goldwater.
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online. 12:02 p.m., July the 27th, this final week of the month of July as we get into August on Saturday, and who knows, when it comes to football season, we finished last week on some really good news, and then we wake up this morning with some not so good news. Darren and I will discuss that as the afternoon rolls right along. That is Darren Goldwater sitting to my left. I am Jamie Bradford. Thank you for joining us on the Podbean app, live and listening and watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. JBandGoldwaterShow.com for all those platforms and information on our daily program. At Sports Radio JB, at Darren Goldwater on Twitter, collectively at JB and Goldwater across all social media platforms. Lawton Swan at 12:30, Clemson Sports Talk. We'll take a look at the secondary today. This is part 4 of an 8-part series as we look deep into these position groups for both of our major in-state institutions, Clemson and South Carolina. Of course, the Gamecocks, their Week 4 preview, or Part 4 preview, is coming up on Friday. And then at 1:30 this afternoon, Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. There is a lot to get to today. We'll talk about this Notre Dame dilemma, certainly. We've got some NFL. We got some NBA. A lot of Major League Baseball news and notes from the opening weekend of the sport. But we'll lead off with, of course, Darren, what is the big story. I was about to say, how was your weekend? And I know that it was good. It was. Mine was good. Yours was good. And then we woke up this morning, and you thought, oh, no. Especially the way that Friday ended, and you watched baseball this weekend. It felt normal again. I mean, I don't know about you. I watched a bunch. I watched Friday night Smoke in the Brewers. I watched Saturday afternoon. It took my kids to the pool and stuff too, and had some family over. But was able to watch Justin take out the foul pole in right field at Wrigley, and watch a couple of other games throughout the evening and into the late night and stuff like that. Had some baseball on yesterday. Things felt good, and then you wake up this morning and here we are. The Miami Marlins not going to be able to play tonight. And neither are the Yankees and the Phillies, and now baseball has their first real issue of the season after the season has started, and so we've got a lot to kind of compress right into this conversation to figure out the good, the bad, the unknown, and all this, that, and the other.
I'll say this: my weekend was good. Yesterday, when I saw that at least 3 players, starting position players, and a pitcher for the Marlins had tested positive. I saw that right before the start of their game with the Phillies. Mm-hmm. And, I have the package, so I'm flipping through. I watched a ton of baseball this weekend, and I was surprised that the game was played yesterday. Mm-hmm. So then you wake up today to this news, and you're thinking, Oh, God. Because the difference between baseball and, yes, college and pro football, unlike the NBA, the WNBA, soccer, everything going on down in Orlando, the TBT basketball tournament, all those had a bubble, a confined bubble with rules, stipulations. In order to even be on site, you had to be a part of this bubble.
Sure. Yep.
You can't have that bubble if you're traveling for baseball. You can't have that bubble in the NFL. You can't have that bubble in college football. And what immediately is my concern, baseball's been doing a whole lot of testing, lots of it.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys hadn't been testing positive for a while. Now suddenly they do. Now suddenly it is characterized by any disease expert you want to talk to as an outbreak within the Marlins. How did this happen? Why was the game played yesterday? How possible is this to happen again? And where? And there's all questions that I don't know if we can answer.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I was just actually on the phone with somebody, and I was telling that person, I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm certainly not trying to accuse anybody of doing something that was incorrect. I said, but there just seems to be something missing from this story to me at this point in time. I'm waiting for more information. The one thing I would caution people is let's not overreact right now because we don't have all the information. Major League Baseball, I think they're set to have a meeting today to try to figure out what is the best way to move forward. Now let's throw in a couple of true facts here. All right, so as it pertains to Major League Baseball, the sport, they were expecting that something like this probably would happen. There's a reason why there's a 60-man taxi squad. Okay, now we were all hoping, especially over the last couple of weeks, without a bunch of negative information in baseball. We knew about some positive tests here and there and some players sitting out, but we did not see anything that was spreading throughout a clubhouse the way all of a sudden that this has popped up with the Marlins. So we've had a fairly good feeling about where this could go. But again, we knew this could happen, and most importantly, Major League Baseball did. So they did execute a season with a 60-man roster that provided an extended taxi squad, so they have players, and there's a reason why they did that. Now, that being said, what's most important about this conversation, very similar to what you just said here, is, all right, how is this handled? And that is what people will be watching. You're talking about college football, you're talking about the NFL, Major League Soccer, the NBA, everybody. They're all going to be watching how is this handled moving forward. Does this mean that Major League Baseball is going to decide today, Darren, to take a week or two and just let it simmer? I don't think so, but we don't know. Does this mean that they're just going to just keep playing on right on through and let this problem be an isolated problem and let baseball move on? Maybe. I'm not sure. That's the way it seems right now, and it's probably, I think, what it will more than likely be. Could there be more cases in that Miami locker room? Yeah, absolutely. There could be that we just don't know about. How many of these are symptomatic? How many are asymptomatic? What was the testing like? How long did it take to get some of these results back? I mean, there's just so much information, like you just said, that we don't have, that we need to get to digest. And much like everything else we've seen over the last few months, it's very important to let the facts play themselves out here. Now, that being said, I am a huge optimist at all times. That does not mean that you have to be optimistic in this situation at all. You need to understand the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is this could be worse than it is. It could be is what it is. Or it could be, look, we know the numbers are high, but here's the case. It doesn't look good, but it's not that bad, and this is the reason why. So I think there's three real scenarios there, Darren, the way this thing could play out. I don't think it's smart to say look, they know now it's not going to happen again. That's incorrect. I don't think it's smart to say, well, just shut it all down. That's incorrect. I think that the more information we get and we're able to kind of understand the inner workings of everything here, we'll be able to have a little bit more of a better opinion, all of us, the public and therefore.
We've known that there have been testing issues for baseball ever since whatever you want to call it, the extended summer camp, spring training, whatever you want to call it. Teams stopped workouts because they hadn't received results of their tests. That was notably one, the slow testing results.
Let me ask you a quick question on that note real quick. Because of that was the biggest thing for me with all of this. Like, I understand a positive here and there. I get that. Yeah. But, like, during the preseason, when you knew that there were multiple positives, you were halting workouts. Well, they had multiple positives, so why didn't they halt the game?
Well, okay, exactly. So we have two things.
And I'm not trying to pin anything on anybody. I'm just asking.
That is a fair,
I just don't know.
That is a fair question that needs to be asked today. It is being asked today, and we're going to need a better answer than the answer that we're actually getting. So I'm going to first start with this. Did baseball know that this could happen? Yes, of course. Everybody knew that this could happen. To this extent, I think that's what's surprising people. The fact that I know that's what surprised me. Did I expect there to be positive tests? Of course. Did I think that it would go from, hey, Juan Soto for the Nationals test positive on Thursday, and he's not going to play opening night. Now there are a couple of Marlins, and now there's 14 people. Bam. Just bam. 14.
Yeah, right.
That is eye-opening. A month ago, the very beginning of this month, and I'm throwing this up on the screen right now, the Rob Manfred was on with Dan Patrick. And this is his quote. I'm reading it word for word. This was a month ago, and it was unprompted. DP actually played this back earlier this morning, and they were having a conversation about it, but then Manfred went into this part all by himself. He said, I think the way to think about it, Dan, is in the vein of competitive integrity in a 60-game season. If we have a team or two that's really decimated with a number of people who have had the virus and can't play for a significant amount of time, it could have a real impact on the competition, and we'd have to think very, very hard about what we're doing. So that's what we have on our hands right now. Mm-hmm. There is a team or teams, the Marlins, that are absolutely at a competitive disadvantage now for at least a couple of weeks.
Right.
We've got 14 positive tests. Yeah. Now, some are coaches, most are players. So what does that mean from a competitive advantage standpoint? What does that mean for the rest of the league? You do have these taxi squads, but you just want to keep shuttling up these guys that most people haven't heard of just to keep pushing forward or not? That's the question that they're going to have to answer today on this emergency meeting that they have planned. And then as it pertains to yesterday, that game shouldn't have been played. The Athletic has a story out.
Yeah, I read it.
That's plain as day. Here, I'll throw the
Ken Rosenthal, right? And Jason Stark is part of that column. Yeah.
So here's the quote. I'm throwing it up right now. Multiple sources have confirmed the Marlins played despite having 3 players learn yesterday, that they'd tested positive. 2 days after, a 4th player. So they knew Friday 1 guy tested. 3 guys test positive on Sunday. According to The Athletic here, 2 infectious disease specialists told The Athletic on Sunday that these positive tests fit the definition of a clear outbreak. But sources said those tests were not enough for either Major League Baseball or the club to take action.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting quote. I guess the question that comes out of that then is, why not?
Right.
And you know what? They might have a great answer for that, and everybody can say, okay, that's fine, and we move on. They might not have a very good answer, and then you go, all right, well, that's a problem. Questions like that need to have pretty good answers to be able to continue on. I am not necessarily in the camp of competitive disadvantage when it comes to taxi squad players. I mean, there's a reason why they're up there. If that's who you got, that's who you got. I mean, I think that these guys would still like to go play. I mean, especially in the case of like the Miami Marlins. I mean, they're not going to win the World Series, not going to win the division. You know, you could actually look at this as it's not good, but the flip side of it, the other side of the pillow, to steal a quick quote from Stuart Scott, is all right. Well, you're going to get some guys up, and they're going to get some playing time, and we'll see how it all unfolds. I think the bigger story here is what is the domino effect, because you've got the Marlins game that has now been canceled tonight, and you also have the Yankees-Phillies game that has been canceled, and that has been canceled out of an abundance of precaution because the Marlins just departed the Phillies locker room. So they're basically, cleaning the locker room and sanitizing and things of that nature. Pretty much everything in the ballpark that could have had a player in it. They're going through a bunch of different stuff to try to make sure that's safe, right, for the next team. So then my question rolls over to this. All right, well, they say these games are canceled. So are we just not making them up?
There was a thread with Jason Stark in it. I think and Ken Rosenthal as well. I think the correct word is postponed, but I do think canceled was what was used right off the bat. Okay. But I think as of now, they're postponed.
Okay. All right. Well, so that's good because, if you are able to play a season out, especially teams like the Yankees and the Phillies, they might want to have a full slate of games because they're going to be in the hunt.
Yep.
Coming up here in a couple of months. No reason really for me to read the Marlins statement or Major League Baseball statement on this. There's nothing to either one of those. They're not saying anything we haven't already discussed and you don't already know. I would roll this question because this is a very important week, especially for guys like us, like our program, which is centrally focused on college football usually. So we know that coming up later on this week, Darren, you have more than likely major decisions that will be made in college football pertaining specifically to the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and others. But those three really are the focus because they're trying to figure out exactly what to do with the season, how many games to play, when to start, what does that schedule look like. We're going to talk about a lot of that today, especially like Notre Dame and their dilemma with the ACC or the ACC's dilemma with Notre Dame maybe. So that being said, let's compare and contrast a little bit because college football, it was just stated just a few days ago. Bob Caslin said this in Columbia, the president at South Carolina, and we've heard this throughout, the last few weeks, that they were really focused on Major League Baseball. Now, let's get a couple of compare, contrast, pros and cons, facts, non-facts out there for the sake of this conversation. You can make whatever judgment you want to make on it. I'm not leaning one way or another. I just want to make sure that all the facts are on the table. First and foremost, college football has over 100 players on a roster. Baseball does not. All right, so college football is a contact sport. Baseball is not. All right, that does not bode well for the sport of college football. College football also only plays one game a week. They play every Saturday. So for the sake of testing, you do have plenty of time to receive test results. Now, one of the things that from a medical standpoint, I'm not a doctor, I'm regurgitating here, that we obviously have known and we're really seeing here is just because you test negative does not mean that you don't have the virus. You might have tested negative yesterday and you contract it today, and then your next test isn't closer till the game, and the result comes back after the game, and you happen to play with it.
Right.
So there's a real issue there. There's no question about that. So does college football look at this and say, okay, we got to be able to test much more than every Wednesday? I'm sure there will be, Darren. Are there some folks in college football saying this just isn't going to be worth it? It's just not. Are there? I mean, you have obstacles in every sport. The NBA has different obstacles from Major League Baseball, which has different obstacles of football, which has different obstacles from soccer, which they're all different. Roster size, number of games played, standards, protocol. I mean, all this stuff. Contact versus no contact. I mean, you could look at everything. So I'm now kind of wondering when we get these decisions later on this week, if we'll get a decision to not make a decision or if we'll actually get a decision.
Towards the end of the week, because the SEC is scheduled to meet, Thursday on the 30th. I anticipate hearing from other leagues right around that time, if not right after that time. And prior to that, you've got baseball here that will have some type of an announcement, probably today, if not tomorrow.
Yeah, should be today,
probably
right?
Today, right? Because they've canceled 2 games that we know of, and there are, basically a full slate of games that are scheduled to be played, and it starts this afternoon. So there has to be some comment from baseball other than what they've already said earlier today, which is essentially everyone associated is going to get tested. Mm-hmm. But as we've discussed multiple times now, college football is looking at Major League Baseball and how they're handling this.
Yeah.
The fact that the testing right now, the protocols for the NCAA are we'll test you Wednesday and then play you Saturday.
Well, those are, let's remember, those are guidelines.
Yes.
Teams can do more,
and they can
can't
adjust.
do less, but they can do more.
They can adjust.
Yeah.
So let's say the Power 5 can adjust. They can find the money in order to test more frequently. Mm-hmm. The lower levels will not have the money to test more frequently, and
not going to be there.
Right. And right now, what we do know with this, it's very safe to say that testing twice a week is not enough because we just saw it with the Marlins. We just saw this happen.
Yeah.
So are we willing to risk these kids, the community, them passing it on to their parents, them passing it on to their kids, the coaches getting it? And you can take the precaution of testing Wednesday and you think you're fine, but really you're starting to be someone who can transmit the disease by Friday or Saturday and you play. Then what? I'm curious to see what happens with the Phillies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see what.
That's not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but the next 48 hours is huge for that reason, right? If the Phillies, if they don't have anything, that is great news.
No, that's outstanding news.
It sucks for Miami. Don't get me wrong, but if they do, if the Phillies find that they've got a small outbreak like this, you have a different level problem.
You got a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Phillies, but think about the clubhouse attendants. Think about the bus drivers for the Marlins taking them to and from the ballpark. Think about the hotel staff. Think about any of the waiters who had brought them food to their rooms. I mean, there are lots of people who have been in contact with these guys. How far did this outbreak reach?
Mm-hmm.
And that answer, I don't know how long it's going to take to get that answer, but that answer is going to be critical in how other sports respond.
Yeah, absolutely. If the way that I'm kind of seeing this is if other organizations like the NCAA look at this and they see, okay, we don't want we don't want one positive test, let alone an outbreak. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we know that that everybody cares. They don't want to see anybody get sick, even if you're asymptomatic. They don't want to see anybody come down with the virus because of the spreading and all the medical terms. You can throw all that stuff in there. We know that. But I think what the real focus is, this is just me thinking out loud here, Darren, is they're looking at the domino effect of this. If there's a real domino effect, your problem, it was already huge. Now it becomes, I don't know if this is actually manageable. If there's not a domino effect, it's still manageable. You just need to continue to investigate what happened and why it happened with the Florida or who are they? The Miami Marlins.
Whatever.
The Florida Marlins.
1AA FCS.
Bring back the F with the Marlin in it. By the way, that's the best logo there.
Yeah, I don't like the neon M thing. No, I don't like.
Bring back the old stuff. So yeah, I mean the next 48 hours are critical because the reality of this is, had some of these tests, let's just say that we got a little bit behind on this and some of the tests, for some reason, maybe they didn't get results and Phillies and Yankees went out and played tonight. And there's a scenario that is much worse case than the fact that they've caught it. Now, that is good news. They have caught this. And what's also good news as it stands right now is we're talking about one of 30 teams. That's it. We're not talking about 30 teams. We're not talking about 20 teams, 10 teams, not even 2 teams. As we know it now, again, this information could change in 5 minutes, but that's what we know now. So, yeah, the next 48 hours is crucial. As it pertains to college football, let me go ahead and make a quick recommendation here. Just go ahead and back the season up. Not that anybody's going to ask me or anybody cares about what I've got to say, but Darren, it might just be my observation today. Back the season up because you have such a learning curve coming up when players are really interacting in practice and things like that, and students trickle on campus. And by the way, just as an FYI, every campus is not going to have just full-fledged students in every classroom. Not that that's the savior of the virus, but I do know there's a lot of campuses where there's tons of classes are only online. So a lot of these campuses are actually trying to do but they might say, hey, look, we're starting the school year on this date. And there are some in-person classes, but they're not all in-person classes. So that is good news. That's just a side note. My point is, if you back yourself up to September 19th, September 26th, and you get 2 or 3 more weeks of folks being able to kind of you got inter squads and things like that. That's a learning. That's information gathering, Darren. So, you're going to really find out a lot. There's still a lot of information that's floating around out there that we just don't have yet. And, I don't think this cancels Major League Baseball's season. I saw some tweets about that earlier. Just go ahead and cancel. No, let's not do that yet. I don't think that cancels football. I don't think it cancels soccer or the NBA bubble unless you go to strip clubs and eat chicken wings. Let's just not overreact. I've read some of your tweets, and I've read some other ones out there. Let's get the information before reaction is fine. Overreaction, it's just not necessary quite yet.
So what we do know, what's going on is very bad and troublesome, worrisome, however you want to put it, for college football, for Major League Baseball, and for the NFL. It is very worrisome. That's not jumping to any conclusions. That's not saying this is something that's going to happen. All I'm saying is it's worrisome, and it is. It is something that every athletic director, conference commissioner, league executive, when they saw these numbers, I guarantee you every single one of them raised an eyebrow and said, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And now the question is how do we move forward? What are the next steps? And I do like what you just said. Let's back the season up. I mean, that in months, I think that's the first time I've heard you even suggest that you think that's what should be done. You've known, obviously, that it's possible, right? I mean, obviously, we've known that college football may not start in the first weekend of September, and the odds haven't been very good. But for you to suggest, okay, let's buy a little bit more time, that's kind of what I'm saying. It is worrisome. It caught your eye. It's okay, let's see if we can figure something out if we buy ourselves a couple more weeks. So I don't think we're going to hear college football jump out today and say, that's it. I don't think we're going to hear that from the NFL. I don't think we're going to hear that from baseball, although I wouldn't be shocked. And certainly if there are outbreaks amongst other teams, that is going to happen.
It will happen.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If they don't can it.
Yes. So,
which I don't think they would. I'm with you. I think they would. We're going to pause it. And then once it's below this threshold and, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, we'll restart the season and play
40 games.
40 games. 50 games.
I mean, it'd be great if they can isolate what happened to the Marlins. Say somehow, some way, something got into this group of people, right? So it wasn't just this random fluke type of thing, and it carried its way through essentially a third of their 30-man.
Yeah. Golly.
So if they can really isolate how this happened, that's going to be great. Regardless of how it happened, it does show you how quickly this thing can spread, right? I mean, a couple guys get it in the locker room and bam, like half of them have it.
Even with all these precautions in place.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. With all the testing and everything.
And that's why, I'm sitting here looking at this saying, go ahead and delay the season and make an announcement on the schedule. Because what we're seeing here with again, this is not end all be all to me. You know how I am and how I speak about this every day, but this happened in an incredibly controlled environment.
Yep.
And to this point in college football, all environments have been controlled. We've seen protocols and guidelines truly working, and which is great. But at the same time, now games have started to be played in Major League Baseball, and now we're seeing this. And so there's also not a guarantee that this actually started in the Marlins locker room.
Right.
It could have started somewhere else. And so, and that's when you get them out of that, quote, bubble or controlled environment. You've got travel involved. You've got other teams involved. You've got other staff involved. You've got a bunch of different things involved here. And so as that pertains to college football, they're in a controlled environment. They're in a bubble right now, and it is working, and there's no question about that. And if you could just play the season just like this, you'd probably be fine for the most part, but that's obviously not the case. And so that you're going to have a similar change in the sport of football where there's going to be travel involved. There's going to be different teams involved and different staffing involved and different just a bunch of buses and airplanes and team meals and all types of stuff. And so you have to get as much information as you can. And in order to continue to control that environment to the best of your ability, when it comes to scheduling, you have to schedule against people that you know are under the same guidelines and protocols as you are. Well, we know Major League Baseball is under the same system. But that as it stood today, would not be a guarantee in college football because, I respect the heck out of them, but Coastal Carolina and South Carolina are on two different levels. Clemson and Wofford are on two different levels. I mean, if they had to play game one each other, you don't know that what the Gamecocks have done or the Tigers have done is exactly what they have done in Myrtle Beach.
Mike Gillespie from the ABC affiliate up in Columbia tweeted out earlier today that there is growing concern amongst folks in Columbia, associated with the athletic department, of playing their non-Power 5 games this year for that very reason. So that was from Mike Gillespie earlier this morning.
And I think that's more just that growing concern has somehow trickled its way into the media. I like Mike. Mike and I tweet back and forth from time to time, send each other some messages. But I think Mike would tell you exactly what I just said there. That's been the concern for a while.
It is, yes.
It's just that they maybe haven't said that publicly. But now that this is public with Miami and the situations can correlate a little bit, you can say publicly, okay, maybe it might not be a good idea to play teams that we can't necessarily trust to be doing the same things we're doing.
Especially if ACC, SEC, Power 5 teams come out soon and say, you know what, we're not going to test twice a week. We're going to test 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, Coastal's not going to afford that. Sunbelt can't afford that. SoCon can't afford that.
Well, I'll tell you, I just got, and I know we got to go. We're actually going to get into some fun football stuff here in a minute. But I got a text this morning from a D3 football coach. I'll just read it. I'm not going to say who this gentleman is or where he coaches, but he is on a staff whose conference has been pushed to the spring. This is D3.
Yep.
Quote: "We weren't surprised. The players were, for the most part, saw it coming. There are 28 D3 conferences, and the majority of them have been pushing things back to spring. The biggest reason is that we just can't afford the amount of testing that the NCAA requires. Can't afford the amount of testing." And we've known this is a coach now saying what we pretty much always knew. When they came out with this 2 tests per week thing, they pretty much priced out the lower level divisions, end quote. So that obviously is a major concern if you're an FBS football program, and the Miami situation obviously adding much more to that concern. So we'll see what that looks like. We'll talk about it more throughout the afternoon. Gene Sapkoff at 1:30. He'll be part of that conversation, certainly. But up next, Lawton Swan with Clemson Sports Talk. We will check in with the Tigers football program and get his take on the secondary as well. Obviously, we'll get his thoughts on the Miami situation as it pertains to college football. His angle might maybe be a little bit different than mine and Darren. So hang tight. It's Monday on the JB and Goldwater Show, and we'll be right back.
Doesn't it feel like it?
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
This is Clemson baseball coach Monty Lee, and you're listening to JB and Goldwater. Go Tigers.
Now, hear this.
Who the hell is that?
The JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
It's 12:34. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show. Monday afternoon, Darren Goldwater to my left, Jamie Bradford. Listen on the Podbean app, watch it everywhere, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and you get to see the fine face of Lawton Swan. He is the owner of ClemsonSportsTalk.com. He's also on the air daily in Columbia, South Carolina, and in Florence, South Carolina, and in Manning, South Carolina. And he's on the air on Mondays in Charleston, South Carolina, and all over the globe via our show as well. 4 to 6 p.m. is Clemson Sports Talk on Twitter at Clemson Sports. Hey, Lawton.
Guys, how are you, man? Happy Monday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, always. I know. Damn Marlins. Hadn't won anything since 2003, and now they're trying to screw it up for the rest of us.
Boy, I tell you what. After last week at Clemson, no positive cases, no active cases. I guess they said nobody in quarantine, and feeling kind of good heading into the weekend. Like I was opening up a sprint. It's like I caught a cramp today on Monday, man.
I told you might have a different take than us. Well played, my friend. Well played. Yeah, well, now we're going to look at the secondary in a minute with Clemson. This is part 4 of an 8-part series with you as we preview position groups for the 2020 Tigers. Also do want to make sure we talk about Notre Dame with you. But let me get your quick take on this Marlins situation. And we're hoping by the end of the week to hear some big news from the Southeastern Conference, the ACC, possibly the Big 12 in particular. I think a lot of this is led, of course, by Greg Sankey and what they'll decide in the SEC. But we all know that those conference commissioners, ADs, presidents, coaches, their eyes are on this. So as the situation unfolds with Miami, what is your take on how this pertains to the future of college football?
I think that is the model that they're scared will take place. I think that's the thing that they fear the most. And more specifically, how do you handle it, if 2 of your quarterbacks end up testing positive? Or, and again, there's still so much we don't know. And that's why I think we felt fairly positive coming off of the announcement last week with Clemson, because, if it's possible that you don't contract COVID-19 a second time around in a calendar year, sort of like the flu, then maybe these concerns can be diminished to a degree. But there's still so many questions out there that's why I think everybody's kind of watching this thing with their ears up. And when you see a situation like Miami with the Marlins, and you see how quickly it feels like it spreads, you think to yourself, how do these colleges avoid it with students on campus? I just don't see a way. I think the NBA is trying to do the most perfect situation possible to play games by having that bubble around them. I think colleges have the capacity to do that. I don't think they will, unfortunately. And then on the flip side, you see baseball just kind of trying to open it up a little bit and go after it. And boy, for less than a week later, this is what we're talking about with baseball. Guys, it's tough to imagine that football doesn't have this same issue in September or October whenever things get started.
Yeah, and saying that, I mentioned to Darren, there are a couple of facts that we need to make sure that we continue to include in the conversation. Baseball plays every day. Football would play once a week. Now, there's 100 football players, and there's, 30 or so baseball players in each dugout every day. I guess if you add coaches and stuff like that, there's a little bit more. And then the main thing here is you want to watch the domino effect, right, Lawton? Like if you see a couple of other teams, I mean, if all of a sudden the Phillies pop up with 10 guys positive, we've got an issue. There are some different obstacles to overcome in both sports and others. None of them can be compared perfectly because they all have different hurdles to jump through. But at the same time, yeah, this is the first real shoe to drop where it becomes a true conversation, right? Of, all right, is it even worth it?
Yeah, this is the fear I think that everybody's had from the outset, with getting back to sports. It's like, okay, we want to see it, right? And I think as humans, we're tired of being cooped up. We're tired of kind of living this life because we don't want this to become the new norm. And because of that, for the first time, I think in a lot of our lives, we're willing to give up some of the other norms. Like we're willing to say, okay, Notre Dame, you play in the ACC championship if you want to. Okay, guys, maybe we play an 8-game regular season. Nobody's going to complain. Like we're starting to reach this breaking point as human beings, I think mentally to a degree. We're just like, you know what? We just want sports no matter what. But then when you get it and you're willing to watch it with fake fans and cardboard fans and piped in sound, and then all of a sudden you're getting guys on these teams contracting COVID-19 to the degree too. That's the other thing. Like I think today the story's different if it's like, 2 players test positive. But when you start to see that number starting to reach into 12, 13, whatever the final number ends up being, it really raises your eyebrows. And I hate it because I think there's the sentiment that if you state the obvious like I did, that's a gut punch to college football, people go, oh, well, why he's such a, he's an idiot. Why doesn't he want to see college football this year? I do want to see college football, but I recognize that those numbers are going to be, indicative of the thought process of the athletic directors and the presidents of these universities. Yeah. And I, it is what it is what I want to say to people that think I don't want football. It is what it is.
I get into it with people about that often. In fact, there was a morning NFL reporter who said something this morning, and he said, it feels like there are a lot of NFL guys out there who want the virus to win, who want it to affect football. I'm like, no, that's not at all what's happening here. Nobody wants the virus to win. Nobody wants to see more of what we love and are used to taken away from us. But it's just reality, and it's not reality that it will happen, but it's reality that we're in danger, very much so danger, of that actually happening. I mean, the sense we're getting around here, like the cloud that I feel on top of us it's like right on top of us. Friday, it felt like, woo, I'm feeling pretty good. I was on Jamie's optimism train, and now today is like just smack in the face.
Okay, when we published the article over on Clemson Sports Talk, 0 active COVID-19 cases, we chose a picture of Dabo Swinney, giving the old, let's go, guys. And that's the way it felt.
Yeah.
That didn't mean that I want to see college football any more or less than I did the day before. But then today, when I talk about the gut punch, that doesn't change either.
Right.
It's like, man, you're just feeling these blows, man, and they're real because we love sports. Yeah. And that's what makes this the I would argue probably more passionate than politics in our country, but I think it's the single most passionate topic that we have in America across, race, gender. Everybody dives into sports because of that. And man, that did not feel good this morning seeing that news at all.
On Twitter at Clemson Sports. All right, now let me pose this question. Obviously, 2 games canceled tonight because of this, but everything else is on deck. They're ready to go. People will be playing baseball. So if we continue to move forward and we don't see this major domino effect, Lawton, obviously the Marlins are going to have a little bit of a situation to deal with. This could, kind of linger throughout the next week or two. We'll see how it, what happens, taxi players and things of that nature. Does this affect the Phillies? All those questions still to be answered. But if the rest of the sport moves on, essentially at the expense of one organization or possibly 2, does that bode well for the sport of college football? Where we're gonna move forward with this. You might have a casualty or 2 here. It might be a bad term to use in this sense, but you might have a team or 2 that's really screwed up for them. But the rest of us, we're just gonna move forward because this thing, it spread throughout their locker room, but it was contained to their locker room, not the locker room of the whole sport.
That might be how we have to see it. I mean, in all honesty, and I know that's not ideal because that's going to create open dates for teams and things of that nature. I think it also begs the question, is it smart to go to the 10+1 schedule?
Yeah.
I mean, would we not be wiser playing less games in the hopes that you can have a week or 2 at the back end to make up some ball games? Because, again, I think that the belief at this point for me that we're going to have some sort of long college football season seems so far-fetched. I mean, it just seems so far-fetched right now. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, I think a shorter season is actually a wiser choice. I think playing sooner actually is a wiser choice and try to keep the college students off campus. That was kind of my thing. When Clemson announced that they were going to postpone the students arriving on campus, guys, and I may have told you this last week, I thought to myself, okay, well, September 3rd is supposed to be the opening kickoff against Georgia Tech, and the students aren't going to get back on campus until the 21st. So that might be, say, 3 weeks that you have there. And then we know that with COVID-19, occasionally it's maybe a week or 2 before things start cropping up. I thought 5. Okay, 5 games. 5 games of Clemson football, 5 games of South Carolina football in 2020 would feel like 10,000 games of Clemson and South Carolina football. So I was really all for it. But then you start hearing people say, back it up. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. It kind of just feels like, look, if you're going to walk into the fire, let's sprint into it. And then if we just have to, pull ourselves out, we'll do it. But, I did not feel good today. The Miami Marlins news, I never thought Major League Baseball news would get me down about college football, but it managed to do it.
Yeah, especially from the Marlins. I mean, I'd rather give the Yankees credit than that gum Miami Marlins. Well, you got an interesting point there, because I just said a little bit ago, the way that we see this now in this information gathering stage we're in, go ahead and push the season back a couple of weeks. My thought process with that is we haven't started practice yet, real practice. And you're gonna get these guys where they're gonna be out there hitting each other and on campus and things of that nature, and you might have some issues pop up and you're gonna need to buy some extra time. So go ahead and do it. But you do have a point. I think it's a very good point. Yeah, you want to play as many games as you can without students on campus. That's kind of the whole goal here. That's what everybody keeps talking about, these bubble. Oh, the NBA bubble works great. Well, you can't have the bubble in football or in baseball, but if you can without others around, that gives you a better shot at this thing. So, yeah, I agree. And let me ask you this, speaking of that, because I'm with you. The 10-1 model might be in a little bit of jeopardy now as far as flexibility goes for the season. I thought that was the whole point of scheduling anyways, to change the scheduling to allow for flexibility to get the games in. So what if we stick with maybe an 8-1 model where you've got the 8 conference games, then you have that, Clemson, South Carolina, whatever. Well, how do Clemson fans take this if what Tony Barnhart said is true, that the league is really, and I think the ACC presidents meet on Wednesday, if they're really leaning towards, look, we're going to bring Notre Dame in for 1 year, doing away with divisions, top 2 teams, they're going to go play in the ACC championship game. Well, Tigers are scheduled to go to South Bend, and we know that's the most important or most difficult game on their schedule as it is. If they happen to slip up one other place, they could be staring at themselves sitting outside of an ACC championship game. Now, I'm not going to predict that, but how does this change the season if you look at, we're just 15 teams, top 2 go play without divisions?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and it's one that I don't know that anybody really had a chance to think much about until this scenario is kind of played out. So, it seems like a bit of a moving target still, and obviously I think there is the feeling amongst some people that Notre Dame's getting some preferential treatment here and getting an advantage that they shouldn't be afforded, and that comes from years of what Notre Dame's kind of been in college football. But I'll tell you this, and I thought about this a good bit yesterday. If you start to talk about what they can bring you in this year, and forget about what maybe they're getting, but what they bring, and that's that NBC eyeball to so many more Atlantic Coast Conference teams every week. I mean, when you start to think about the additional matchups that they'll be able to play on NBC alone against Atlantic Coast Conference teams, I mean, that's a big number in 2020. So from that standpoint, I think, look, if you don't believe that the ACC should do anything to help out Notre Dame, that's fine. You can believe that. But rest assured that in an era where eyeballs on your television set are going to be huge, having additional games, what I think would potentially be additional Atlantic Coast Conference versus Notre Dame games on a national station is a big deal. And I think from that standpoint that, there's a little give and take in this thing more than I think a lot of fans want to acknowledge. I'd love to see the ACC try to force their hand, but I think Notre Dame's value actually now is something that I'd look to capitalize on if I'm the league.
Well, could see Notre Dame, Clemson in the regular season, and then guess what? Right back there in an ACC championship game. History being made.
Well, how about this then? Since we don't want to just commit to 10-1 right now, even going to 8-1 is saying it's iffy, right? We want to make sure we have the most dates available to play as many games as possible. So what if using the idea of the +1, that the rivalry game is there and it may or may not be played? Why can't the season start by saying, look, we're conference only, and then if we can get to this date before a championship game, before bowl season or whatever the stipulation may be, if we can get to this point, then go ahead. Georgia play Georgia Tech, Florida play Florida State, Clemson play South Carolina. Why can't we leave it open-ended like that?
No, I think I'd be fine with that, sort of a tentative, hey, this is when we'll play it if we can play it. And I think people would agree to that. The thing that I've heard a little bit more of recently that's kind of got me thinking is that, they're worried about flying these teams around.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what if we just really localize the sport for a year? I mean, would that be absolutely, dumbfounding if we did something like that where nobody flew, they just got on buses? I don't think that would be completely out of the question now either. I know that people would say, what do you mean? The conferences aren't going to play each other and Clemson's not going to, I think we're wide open here, guys. I think they will. The NBA put them in a bubble in Orlando to try to play. I think these colleges will do whatever. If that means Clemson has to drive to Columbia, to Athens, to Atlanta, to Wake Forest, and a couple of other sites, and take buses, I don't know that we're completely off of that. Maybe even being something wide open and crazy. that we could see over the next couple of weeks because they have to play. I think they feel like they have to play. I don't know that they should play, but I think they feel like they have to, no matter what.
Be a lot of Boston College versus Syracuse.
Oh, right. I did think about that. One Clemson and Carolina just played 6 times this year.
BC and Syracuse would get a heavy dose of each other. No question about that. All right, if they do play,
it's something, isn't it? I mean, it's something. I mean, this is crazy.
Look, man, folks like I'm gonna lump you into my little bubble here, Lawton. If folks like you and Darren and I and others are able to survive this with what we do every day,
bring it on.
We have great futures. This is not to make light of it. We all have kids at home, but this is just something. All right, if they do play. Clemson will kind of move to the secondary here. Not a bunch of time, maybe 6 or 7 minutes to spend on these guys. Once again, a talented group. I think Phil Steele had Clemson with like the 5th or 6th best secondary in the country or something like that. Maybe 7th, God forbid. Every position group they have is in the top 1, essentially. All right, so if the season started today or tomorrow, who's out there? I mean, if you're looking at starting safeties, starting corners, I mean, they got a bunch of talent. Got a bunch of 5-star guys. You see Kendrick and Goodrich at corner. Is Turner back there at safety? What does it look like today?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, again, you're looking at a guy in Darion Kendrick who's preseason, on the watch list for the Jim Thorpe Award, and I think he's a kid that's pretty undervalued nationally. Remember, he started as a wide receiver and flipped over and became a defensive back and really attacked things head on. And I think that Mike Reed really likes what that young man has to bring to the table. Then you mentioned Mario Goodrich. I think he's got an excellent shot as a junior, but the kid I'm really looking to kind of see what they end up doing with is Andrew Booth. He was a former 5-star kid. Last year he had the little mishap, where he kind of got to a fight and got thrown out of a ball game, and Dabo Swinney went after him a little bit on that front, but he's kind of got that lockdown mentality that I think you like to see. So I think he'll really compete for time. And then Sheridan Jones is a very fluid player. He came out a year early, as a matter of fact. He reclassified, and so he's actually a year younger age-wise than the rest of the class members there. But, I mean, he's another kid that brings a lot of versatility to the table. So from that standpoint, I think the cornerbacks at Clemson are locked up. Nolan Turner is going to do a pretty good job in the back end in the safety spot. And then I think that strong safety position is where you really keep your eyeballs on how they utilize and how versatile maybe a Mike Jones Jr. can be by comparison to what they were able to do with a guy like Isaiah Simmons. Jones will tell you that, he's kind of, I don't want to say built and framed like Isaiah Simmons, but, kind of like a Dorian O'Daniel, very versatile type player that can do a little bit of everything. So I think for me right now, that's really the spot I'm keeping my eyeball on, and I can't really tell you what it's going to look like, but I just know this. What we saw from Brent Venables a year ago, guys, with that defensive front, playing some 3-down looks, I think they're going to do whatever they feel like puts the best 4 guys back there in the secondary when necessary, because I think they really feel like they've got some versatility. Landon Sanders, I'll throw that name out there too, is another kid who I think has come on pretty strong, and I think he might have a chance to get some PT this year too. I mean, you'll recognize him by the big hair, the mane kind of flowing out of the back like Troy Polamalu. I mean, you think Trevor Lawrence got hair? Let me tell you, Landon Sanders got hair for days.
Right. So do I if I were to ever take off this hat. But I mean, I still haven't gotten a haircut since all of this started. Normally I'm like a 3-4 week type of thing. I mean, I've got a kick and fro, let me tell you. But the secondary's success, right, on any football team, it's true. It comes down to how much pressure the defensive line can get and the front seven can get. And we know that Clemson's going to be fine right there. I mean, so do we expect to see as much creativity from the back of the defense as they've had in the past? Or mostly, look, we can keep this pretty simple and rely on the guys up front to make the damage happen?
Yeah, there's some of that obviously exists, and that was a big benefit for this group a couple of years ago. I don't think anybody, when you saw Trayvon Mullen and A.J. Terrell have so much success, I think a lot of it came from what took place up front on the defensive line. And yes, I think they've got a chance this year to be very disruptive from that standpoint. But, again, I think the key factor that we continue to hear at Clemson is versatility. And whether that's a Joseph Charleston, I mean, you just go kind of down the list of guys. And I know this drives Jamie crazy, but that's all right. You go down the list of guys, you find players that can, play multiple spots for this team on the defensive side of the ball. And I think they really value and covet that. So I think from that standpoint, not only does it help you out that defensive line is expected to be really good this year, and I think a guy like Xavier Thomas is probably in his final season, is what I assume, headed towards a breakout type year, because I think he'll really be, I don't know, I think from the standpoint of a kid, it's difficult to be like a me first guy at Clemson because they don't really like that attitude. But I would not be surprised to hear a guy like Xavier Thomas, saying, Coach, look, I got to get after it. I got to eat. And I think if they let that kid go this year, I think he could have a big year on that defensive front, as I told you guys a couple of weeks ago. But from the standpoint of the secondary, I think they will benefit from the pressure that Clemson generates. And a part of that is obviously the competition that Clemson plays. I mean, we know that. That's people bring that up to me like Clemson fans don't recognize that competition's not the stiffest. But Dabo Swinney will tell you it's not who you play, it's how you play. And as long as they play their best on the biggest stage, they can compete with anybody in the country. I mean, I think that's just where they are right now from a personnel standpoint.
Oh, there's no question about that. Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't show up day in and day out against some of these teams that you're way better than, you sure as hell ain't gonna show up and play well in the big games. But they've done that specifically over the last 5 years under Dabo. Real quick on my. By the way, I'm glad you mentioned that Xanders kid. Golly, I mean, you watch his film, the stuff coming out of high school, the kid can play back there at safety. Real quick, you mentioned Mike Jones. You're not talking about moving him to safety. You're just saying that he could play safety if needed, right?
I think they feel like, in the nickel hybrid look, I think he's versatile enough to cover tight ends and cover running backs out of the backfield without them feeling the necessity of bringing in one of these guys that's typically labeled as a defensive back.
Gotcha.
Like they felt fine with Simmons running in space with somebody. They didn't feel like they had to, pull him off the field. I think they kind of have that same feeling about Mike Jones Jr. I don't know if I'm quite there yet. But I know this, when it was Dorian O'Daniel that was doing it, I wasn't quite there yet. I thought, Simmons took it up a notch, honestly. So from that standpoint, I'm sort of caught between whether he'll trend more like Isaiah Simmons or more like Dorian O'Daniel. O'Daniel's in the NFL and, making a great career for himself already with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he falls somewhere in between those two, which gives me a decent amount of confidence. But I don't know that he's got the top end speed that then Isaiah Simmons had. So that's the thing that I was kind of getting at on that front.
Most people don't. I mean, he's faster than most receivers that are out there.
Yeah, kid can play.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
No question. On Twitter at Clemson Sports, Clemson Sports Talk Daily, 4 to 6 p.m., airing out of Columbia, South Carolina, but you can listen anywhere in the world. ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Lawton Swan, of course, he owns it. He runs it. He's the man. They're also available up in the Florence market and the Manning market as well, and hopefully in others very near you very soon. Lawton, thanks, brother. Hopefully some of this we get some questions answered out of some of the news we've received today. And by the end of the week, I think we will have some answers in college football as to what exactly things are going to look like. But really good stuff, as always. We'll be listening as we do and stealing some of your information and using it on our program.
Hey, guys, always appreciate it. Yeah, I think the ACC is going to put out something on Wednesday, so we'll hope to hear some good news.
Good stuff. Good news to talk to you, as always. Thanks, Lawton.
See you guys
later, man. There you go, Lawton Swan joining us in Columbia. All right, time for a timeout. Didn't even get to some of the stuff that we saw in baseball this weekend, so we'll make that part of our program when we return. We'll get into this Notre Dame scenario as we just kind of discussed with Lawton. Is it fair? What could it look like? Could this really affect Clemson? Holy moly, it could. We got some NFL and some NBA news to drop on you as well, and then Gene Sapakoff. He's ahead at 1:30, so plenty in our program, plus some really good news for the Gamecocks. We'll tell you about that as well, pertaining to the football program and one player specifically. So hang tight.
Good news is good.
Yeah.
I'll take good news any way I can get good news today.
These days, we're on the good news train, no question. Hang tight, hour 2 coming up.
Honey, Honey Baked Ham in Somerville and in Mount Pleasant is your home for catering and lunch. Honey Baked Somerville, owned by former Gamecock right-hander Mike Sisko, is just off the interstate and they are ready to cater to your next business or family meal. Plus, drop in for an incredible sandwiches daily for lunch. The Mount Pleasant location is at the foot of the Ravenel Bridge and always ready to serve and cater to your next meals as well. Plus, delivery is available. Honeybake.com to find your menu today.
What's up, guys? It's JB. Obviously, things have been kind of crazy with the coronavirus taking over our lives. We're stuck inside with family, finding ways to be creative and probably tapping the liquor cabinet a little bit. If you don't have Patrick Davis's Whiskey Jam in yours, put on your mask and gloves and head to Bottles or Burris liquor stores here in Charleston. The Blackberry is my personal favorite on the rocks, but the original Whiskey Jam is Patrick's. So either way, you're winning with Whiskey Jam. WhiskeyJam.com, PatrickDavis.com.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, 1:02 p.m., hour 2, July 27th on the JB and Goldwater Show. Welcome back. It is Monday afternoon. Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford. We are on the Podbean app for free every day between 12 and 2 p.m., and that's where you listen. You watch YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope, all by typing in JB and Goldwater, at JB and Goldwater across all social media platforms, at Sports Radio JB, at Darren Goldwater individually, jbandgoldwatershow.com. Phone lines are open. Some of you might have some questions, might actually want to talk to one of us. 843-321-8893. We never take phone calls around here. We do have a phone line, 843-321-8893. So if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, you can do that by dialing that number. Thanks to Patriots Point for presenting our national anthem every day at 1 o'clock on our program as well. patriotspoint.org to find every bit of information you can get to go see the museum over in Mount Pleasant. Tours, cost, hours. There's a lot of history, a lot of educational opportunities. All that is available via the website. Also, HolyCityDriveIn.com is where you can go to get their drive-in weekend movie series schedule, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings. This past week, it was Grease, Pitch Perfect, and Shrek.
Yeah, one of our quarantine friends. We have like 2 families in the neighborhood that we've been hanging with from what feels like the start of time now. No offense to you guys.
Yeah.
I love you guys. But they went to Shrek last night and had a great time out there. Just rave reviews.
Well, if they had a great time, they're going to love this coming week. If you are a fan of humor and sports, you will want to be at Patriots Point this weekend.
Happy Gilmore.
No. Although that would be a good one. They should show that. Friday night, and remember, you can back your truck in, tailgate, buy the food, drinks there. It's awesome. Such a cool setup at Patriots Point.
Caddyshack.
No. Think football, though.
Necessary Roughness.
No, newer. One of my favorites. Necessary Roughness is great.
Newer comedy.
No. This
Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
Friday night. Remember the Titans. It will air at about 7:30 on Friday night over at Patriots Point. Also, Saturday, this is the family movie. Take the kids. Mona will be showing. If you've never seen Mona, which is another one of those
Pixar animated
Pixar,
things.
Yep,
we've seen it.
Disney's Mona.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Sunday, if you like humor, this might be the date night for you. I laugh every time at this movie, and I've seen it 1,000 times, and it's still hilarious. Wedding Crashers.
Okay, I was thinking humor and sports together,
Yeah,
but no, you've separated them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sports is Friday. It's the Feel Good is Friday. Feel Good Friday.
Yeah.
At Patriots Point, HolyCityDriveIn.com, and then Laugh Your Ass Off Sunday.
Wedding Crashers is great.
It's just a fantastic movie. But certainly we appreciate the fine folks at Patriots Point for presenting our anthem every day at 1 o'clock. All right, real quick before we move on, and we do have Gene coming up in 25 minutes, so we're gonna have to get a move on it here. For this from the NHL. The NHL. This is good, great. The NHL has announced zero, not a one, positive COVID-19 tests among 4,256 administered following training camp as players and staff arrive in Toronto and Edmonton for what is called the NHL bubble and prepare for the start of the 2020 Stanley Cup tournament. The league will administer tests daily. But right now, nothing. They don't have one. That's great news. And Darren and I, during the break, were reading this tweet, which I disagree with, unfortunately, but everybody's entitled to their opinion, and his opinion certainly has more weight than mine. David Price, who is sitting out the 2020 Major League Baseball season, said, quote, "Now we really," in capital letters, "get to see if Major League Baseball is going to put players' health first." Remember when Manfred said players' health was paramount? Also in caps. Part of the reason I'm at home right now is because players' health wasn't being put first. I can see that hasn't changed, end quote. Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with the end of that. Manfred did say that. Maybe they had some missteps originally, but I do think Major League Baseball is trying to play the season.
They're trying to play the season. B, yeah, they are doing everything that they can in order to keep the players healthy. It's very easy for someone who opted out, who is concerned about the virus, as many people are, to use today's news and jump on it like that. That's a very easy thing to do. I won't go that far, but it does show that David Price was right in that the fear is correct. Whether or not baseball is doing everything in their power, the fear of what is possible is certainly correct.
Yes, that's correct. There's no doubt. I think questioning the entire sport is they don't care about our health. Well, they do. They're idiots if they don't, because they can't play without you.
Right.
So, All right. Some notes from baseball this weekend. And first and foremost, if anybody saw the news that Justin Verlander's out for the season, he quickly squashed that. He said, well, that's not right. I'm out for a couple of weeks because of a forearm strain. It'll be reevaluated. Hopefully I'll see you soon. Couple local notes. These are really tied to South Carolina. Well, and one, the Citadel's Asher Wojciechowski, he was actually scheduled to start tonight for Baltimore in that canceled game. And so he will not be He will not be pitching tonight.
No.
Probably a good thing.
And who knows? I wouldn't expect him to pitch tomorrow night. I wouldn't think the series starts tomorrow, so who knows?
You know what I mean? I wonder how they'll handle that rotation. Will they just go back to the top of it and then he gets bumped, or are they just going to bump this thing back and give him his start, or what will they do? That's interesting to watch.
More for the Orioles to have to figure out.
Yeah.
But, hey, they won twice, and good for them.
Yeah, they did. Justin Smoke hit a home run. The only reason it landed is because it ran into the fair pole down the right field line. It was crushed. And I actually, I'll tell you a quick behind-the-scenes note. I was watching him Friday and Saturday, and I probably know a little bit more than some of you about Justin. So I texted him Saturday, and I said, clearly they don't know you, so it's all off speed. I mean, he was out front bad on Friday and really bad to start on Saturday. He saw Hendricks, and then he saw Yu Darvish with the Cubs.
Yeah, Hendricks didn't clear 90, did he?
No.
Yeah.
He struck Smoke out on an 87-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate because he was just so out in front on everything. That 87 looked like about 95.
Yep.
And so I texted him. I said, so here's the thing. Obviously, they're trying to figure you out, so they're staying on. And Yu Darvish and Hendricks, the way they were pitching the entire lineup anyways was kind of backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but today's going to be a good day for you. One of them something will hang, and you'll hit it in the seats. I was wrong. He hit it off the foul pole. But they did hang one, and it was about belt high, a changeup that didn't change much. And Justin changed the game quickly with that one. He put it out of the ballpark. Taylor Widener made his major league debut this weekend. Former Gamecock went in there and had a really good inning. So congratulations to Taylor Widener. But nobody in Major League Baseball, nobody had the weekend that Jackie Bradley had. Jackie Bradley is leading the big leagues right now, folks. 7 of 11 at the plate. Now, the Red Sox did lose 2 of 3 to Baltimore somehow. But he went 7 for 11 with a pair of doubles, and he also had he's wanted now in Baltimore for a couple of robberies out in center field. So different year, same Jackie cover. I've said this time, and look, Darren, I know, I get it. I'm biased. I understand that. But when this dude, if you literally look in the big leagues and say just purebred center fielders, if he's not just number one, he's in that 2 or 3 group. Jackie's reminds me a lot of Andrew Jones in that he gets such a jump on balls that it's by the time the camera gets there, he's almost standing underneath it. And if he's having to make a hell of a play, it's because most people couldn't make the play anyways.
When he makes diving catches, he is coming from out of the screen as he dives on. I mean, that's how far, even as they're zoomed in, the ball's about to hit the ground. You don't see him. And all of a sudden he flies in.
Here comes Jackie.
I've said this many times. I think the best college baseball player I've seen while calling college baseball is Jackie Bradley Jr. Yeah. I thought that, I saw him, I don't even know how many times I saw him. Twice a year with the Citadel, then he was on that 2010 team.
Yeah.
So
God, they wouldn't have won it without him.
Yep. I saw him.
Jackie missed third,
and it was So I stick to that. But in watching that Cubs Brewers game, that was the debut of the virtual fans on Fox.
What'd you think? I enjoyed it. I thought it was neat.
So my first impression when I first saw it, I said, okay, I can get behind it because I think the cardboard cutouts look stupid. I think those are
they do.
Just get rid of them.
I don't want them to get rid of them though because I just think they look stupid.
Stupid.
I think it's just 2020 in a nutshell.
I'm fine with nobody in the seats. I'm totally fine with that. I like the sound that they're piping in. I like the game Major League Baseball is playing through its app that you can kind of cheer along or boo along with the game, and maybe you can hear your button push affected. Yeah, but as the games went on with the virtual fans, it kind of got a little cheesy to me.
Like video game-ish?
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, those fans, if you play, FIFA soccer or, NBA 2K or whatever, that's what the fans are. And they can make it a little bit better than they've got it right now. But it's look, it says something that ESPN isn't going that way, and they put out a statement to that point that we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
I don't think either one's right or wrong, honestly.
They're trying. I think both.
Look, man, we get to watch baseball.
Yeah, I think both. And TBS yesterday, because I watched that. The Nationals and Yankees were TBS.
Yep.
Audio-wise, I think it's great because you can really close your eyes and it sounds just like a normal game. If you got the game on and you're doing something, it sounds just like the normal game. And if they didn't have that, it would sound like a high school broadcast with nobody in the stands.
Right.
And that would be very bad. So I think they've done very well audio-wise.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, I was just happy to watch baseball this weekend. I will say this. I started noticing yesterday, I was like, I feel like I've been watching an alarming number of strikeouts. So I did the math. I didn't give you this information.
No, you did not.
I did the math, folks. There were 3,024 official at-bats this weekend. Of course, those are at-bats that count towards a batting average, not hit by pitches, not walks.
Sacks.
Okay. 3,024 official at-bats. Of those 3,024, there were 784 strikeouts.
Ooh.
26% of official at-bats were strikeouts. Ball wasn't even put in play. And that number should be below 20 always, but it's not in baseball anymore because we know that power numbers make you money these days. I get that. You want to know how many hits there were?
530.
Well, no. Higher. 699.
Okay.
But there was 85 more strikeouts than hits in Major League Baseball this weekend, which is not good. Collectively, that is a 231 batting average in Major League Baseball, which is not good. Now, here's a real stat. Take away the hits.
Yep.
All right, which for the sake of this conversation, you have to. That leaves 2,240 official at-bats in Major League Baseball with those 784 strikeouts. That means if you take away the hits, the number of times that the ball, the number of at-bats that counted towards balls that could have been or were put in play, 31% of those at-bats were strikeouts, meaning over 3 of every 10, somebody was whiffing or just watching it go right by them. 31% ball wasn't even put in play.
So typical of the start of a year, pitching is ahead of hitting at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably, exactly. There's
except for Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah, and Jackie.
Yeah.
But there's a multitude of reasons. Obviously, it's been a tumultuous start to the year. You've got divisions playing each other. A lot of pitchers know these hitters much better. It's a lot easier to go out there and throw well to start the season than it is to be on your game at the plate. And there's a bunch of no fans, mental. I mean, the mentality of some of these kids. There might be. You got some kids who probably weren't even expected to be on the roster. There's a lot of factors with it, but when somebody was not getting a base hit, 31% of the time the ball was not even put in play. You drop that number to 20, and that average probably goes up to about 250, 260, which is where you should be in the big leagues. That's awful. So hopefully that gets better.
It's interesting because there was something that I scrolled through. I'm trying to find it back here right now, and I'm not going to. But the average velocity of the pitchers actually dropped.
Yeah.
And the theory of what I was seeing was because there are no fans. Because the juice that's flowing through you isn't the adrenaline that you're used to because of no fans. So the average velocity was dropping by anywhere from like a half a mile to a mile and a half per hour.
And a lot of that, too, will probably come back up as the season goes on. Some of these guys on strict pitch counts, working through things, stuff like that, wanting to be careful. You've got to remember, right, you got 60 games. So if you go down and you're on the DL, you're out for at least a quarter of the season at this point in time. So, guys, trying to be a little bit more careful and to make sure that they're going to stay healthy throughout the year and things like that. So, yeah, Darren, I did notice that too as well. Braves, Marlins, both 2-1 in the East. Cardinals, Cubs, both 2-1 in the Central. Rockies, Padres, both 2-1 in the West. And then in the American League, Orioles, Rays, both 2-1. Indians, Tigers, Twins, all 2-1 in the Central. And then out West, it's the Astros and the Oakland Athletics. Nobody got through the opening weekend of Major League Baseball unscathed.
One of the closest opening 2 days in Major League history with the amount of teams that split the series. There were only 3 teams. It was the Cardinals, it was the Padres, and there was one other that were 2-0 through 2 games, and it was as close as the start of the season has been in ages for Major League Baseball.
Good stat. Speaking of the Padres and the Diamondbacks are on ESPN at 4 o'clock today. So you Carolina fans will get a good look at Christian Walker and maybe Taylor Widener if he has a chance to get into the ball game. ESPN at 7 o'clock tonight. That's ESPN Plus. White Sox and Indians 7:30. Mets Red Sox on ESPN. In that ball game. Yankees, Phillies, Orioles, Marlins postponed.
Don't expect good things out of the Red Sox this year. I mean, I watched a decent amount of a good handful, if not more, various teams throughout the weekend. The Red Sox are loaded with guys that you're saying, you're on the Red Sox? And who? And there isn't enough pitching there either. So a group of no names in the Orioles took 2 out of 3 from them. I don't expect much out of the Red Sox. I'll be shocked if they make any type of push.
Okay. We'll see. Well, over half the league makes the playoffs.
It won't be them.
Braves, by the way, Mets are still trying to figure out what happened last night. 14-1, the final score yesterday was a debacle.
Jacob deGrom looked awesome on Friday.
I said on Friday, Soroka DeGrom probably the matchup of the day, and it was. I mean, it was a great pitching matchup.
I mean, he was pumping 99, 100 to start that. DeGrom looked really good.
Yeah, he had no issues there. Really good news for South Carolina is Zaquandre White expected to hear today that he will officially be in school, which means that running back depth chart will be what I've been saying, hopefully, that good for South Carolina. Zaquan White waiting on a couple of grades to come in. He expects those grades to be fine. He is qualifying with flying colors, and he will be a part of the Gamecocks stable of running backs. He'll be able to jump right in, get to workouts, and hopefully get to some sort of season here before long. But it's a talented group, him and Marshawn Lloyd, of course, as of now. The way that it looks, maybe Kevin Harris, 1-2 in the backfield for South Carolina. Quick note for Clemson, you Tiger fans, if you're working from home, maybe just take tomorrow off. Tomorrow is going to be a really good day on the ACC Network. It is the ACC Network's Clemson Takeover. The SEC Network has been doing this for a long time. They didn't do it last year. It was the first year they did not do it. Maybe they just ran out of stuff. But tomorrow, you'll be able to see some soccer, men's soccer at 10 a.m., women's soccer at noon, which is a Clemson-South Carolina matchup from last year. Softball at 2, Providence-Clemson basketball from 1989 at 4 o'clock. That was part of the tournament. The greatest ever at 6 o'clock. That's a 30-minute program on the 2018 Clemson Tigers. At 6:30, authentic ACC Clemson football. And at 7 o'clock, 2018 Clemson South Carolina football. And at 10 o'clock tomorrow night, the 2018 season, but 2019 game, the national championship between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Clemson Tigers. That is all part of the takeover tomorrow.
I'll give you one more MLB stat. Thanks to Nick B for chiming in with this. I verified it because I'm anal and I wanted to make sure. But Nick, you're right, and I wasn't aware of this until I did. It's the first time since 1954 that no major league team is 3-0.
Wow.
So that backs up the closest 2-game start.
Years.
Yeah.
Wow. Good point.
Yeah.
Speaking of Clemson, could it be Clemson and Notre Dame in the ACC championship game? Gene is ahead in 10 minutes, and we'll talk to him about this as well. But what is very interesting, Darren, is Tony Barnhart just a few days ago reported that the presidents in their meeting on Wednesday will discuss a trio of scheduling options. And 2 of those 3 formats, quote, would bring in Notre Dame as a full member of the ACC for 1 year only and eligible to play for the conference championship. So he also reports that the ACC is expected to, quote, do away with divisional play and choose the top 2 teams in the 15-team league. That, of course, will include Notre Dame to play in the conference championship game. Notre Dame already has 6 ACC opponents. That does include Clemson on that schedule. The first and reportedly least likely scenario, but this is still the first scenario for the ACC presidents, is to consider the current scheduling format, which is 12 games, the way that it's laid out. The second is that 11-game schedule we referenced with Lawton, which will be 10 conference games and 1 non-con. Now, that would push back the start of the season 1 week if they did that, which would be September the 12th. The third scenario is a 9-game season with 8 conference games and 1 non-con. So it would preserve Clemson, Carolina, and other ACC, SEC matchups. Other teams would need to find a 9th game. that would push the start of the season back to around September the 26th, which I'm a little confused by that. Like, why wouldn't you just start the season on September 19th, give yourselves another week, a makeup week, essentially, for games if you play a 9-game schedule? We'll see what they say on Wednesday. But the question really becomes, and I understand where Lawton's coming from. If you add Notre Dame, how fair is it? But think about the notoriety it'll give the conference, TV rights, and this and the other. Oh, it'd be great. Yeah, that's great. And I love you, Lawton, but this is also coming from a Clemson fan. If you're a North Carolina fan or a Virginia Tech fan or a Miami fan, do you feel the same way? Because you're talking about bringing in a top 10 program who might just walk right into the ACC championship game.
Who might just it strengthens your schedule. I mean, what Lawton said was it feels a little bit like some people feel as though Notre Dame is getting preferential treatment here a little bit, and that and certainly it benefits the landscape of the ACC viewer-wise with Clemson, with Notre Dame's partnership with NBC. I think I understand where fans can sit there and say, look, this isn't fair, and I have no interest in Notre Dame coming into this league. I get that. But this year's going to be weird. If we have a year, there's nothing normal going on here. So maybe it's best for the ACC and put me on this side. Mm-hmm. Look, all right, for a year, Notre Dame, come on, help us out a little bit, because I think it helps Clemson. I keep saying Clemson. It helps the ACC more than it helps Notre Dame right now. Because if, let's say, the Big 12, SEC, if the Power 5 conferences go conference games only with an extra game, Notre Dame's going to be able to put something together. I think they'll be able to figure something out. Maybe not play 8, 9 games, maybe play 7. I think it benefits the ACC more than it does Notre Dame, just from a notoriety standpoint.
Well, yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, it definitely would help the league because you're bringing in a power program. If the ACC powers, for some reason, and I'm talking about the decision makers here, think that in some way, shape, or form, extending an invitation to Notre Dame is going to be some type of backdoor way to motivate the Irish to join their league full time, boy, are they wrong. Notre Dame is not – look, Notre Dame, nothing in the ACC is going to push them to join that conference or any other conference. They will make whatever decision they want to make whenever they feel like making it. They don't have to. Financially, they're very healthy. But, you know, here's my point. If the ACC is saying, okay, look, here's the deal. Because of the awkwardness of this year, we're going to go to this 15-team format where the top 2 teams – we're eliminating divisions for 1 year, and the top 2 teams are going to go play in the ACC championship game. If I'm a Virginia Tech fan or a Miami fan or a North Carolina fan, which I think are the 3 next best programs, at least as it looks today in this league, I would say, oh, you want to do that? That's great. Here's what I think you should do. Forget Notre Dame. We don't owe them anything. And why don't you just schedule our 8 games in the ACC with the ACC as we know it, and then still do this? And then guess what? One of us will be able to play in the ACC championship game because we're actually valued members of this league and have been for decades, as opposed to Notre Dame, who could give 2 rips about our league except for filling out their schedule. So I understand where Lawton's coming from because the reality of it is I think it's a foregone conclusion that Clemson is in the ACC championship game no matter whether Notre Dame joins or not. But it's not for some of these other teams that are right on the cusp of making it.
Yeah.
So they're like, wait a second, you're going to give us another hurdle to get into an ACC championship game? Like, what if North Carolina has a special year? You know, what if they're like, look, man, you know, we're 8-1. Like, you know, we got a shot at the playoff here if we can beat Clemson in the ACC championship game. But our one loss is, you know, to Notre Dame because they shouldn't even be here. I mean, I think you're asking for some major problems.
All right, what if Clemson's undefeated prior to the ACC championship game. Notre Dame has 1 loss because Clemson beat them. And North Carolina has 1 loss. No, along the 1-loss line. Maybe the ACC gets 2 teams.
That's what I'm saying.
So it benefits them.
It benefits the league, but not one of the other teams in the ACC. That was my point.
But it could.
You're saying if like Clemson beat Notre Dame and
say North Carolina jumps Notre Dame, but because Notre Dame's in the league,
I don't think that would happen this year though.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Phil Steele's really high on him.
Oh yeah, Miami. That's my point. Like I'm kind of on their side about it. How about this scenario? What if Clemson went up to South Bend and lost?
I think it's possible. I said when we were doing their schedule,
game, right?
I said I think Clemson loses a game this year.
Yeah, and I said I think they go undefeated. But what if they lost that game? And who knows what the scheduling flip would look like if there's some type of new schedule that comes out. Maybe the Tigers do draw North Carolina, or they have to go to Blacksburg or something like that. All of a sudden, you look at this and you go, wait, whoa. Is there a possibility of the Tigers not being in the ACC championship game? Nobody thinks that today. But in a new schedule, could there be like true roadblocks? I mean, everybody thinks Alabama and Georgia, or maybe Florida, or maybe Texas A&M could be in the SEC championship game. But everybody acknowledges that they have multiple roadblocks to get through to get there. Everybody acknowledges that in the Big Ten. We acknowledge that in the Big 12. We acknowledge that even in the Pac-12. Nobody acknowledges that in the ACC. It's Clemson and everybody else.
Yeah.
But this could be a game changer if they flip this format, and maybe by virtue of doing that, have to flip the schedule.
Let's play the schedule. Let's get to that part. Let's get there. Let's have this debate in like 2 months when Clemson and Notre Dame are about to play.
Well,
let's do that.
Let's say this real quick before we go to Gene. Today is July the 27th. Think about this for a second. From everything we've heard over the last month with this pandemic as it plays to the season. If the season is backed up, you know how long we have before we play football?
A long time. 2-3 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
If you could get to September 26th, you have 2 months to get this figured out. You could realistically get to essentially week of and say, we're not going to be able to do it.
Absolutely, that could happen.
Yeah. You've got 2 months. There is still plenty of optimism, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. We have to keep an eye on what happens with Miami and all this. I understand all that. But I'm just saying, there is still 2 months.
Yes.
If they back the season up.
Yes. There is optimism still there, especially on your train. Today's news wasn't favorable for that optimism.
No, it wasn't.
No.
But maybe Gene. We'll see whose side Gene's on. You and I have been on the same side.
I've
already said, I think that they should probably back the college football season up. But we have to see how this is managed.
And that's the first time you've said that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first time you've, without prompting, I think it's a good idea. So
we'll see. 1:31 on a Monday afternoon. Gene Sapikoff with the Post and Courier. He is up next.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
The JB and Goldwater Show.
That's us. Because we play this.
And there are these guys in a band on stage bouncing on trampolines, and one of them is playing a vacuum cleaner on his face. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. This band was going for it as hard as they could. I've never seen anything like it. And I said to the bartender, I was like, who is this band? Oh, this is a band from New Hampshire called Fish.
One of the oldest locally written tunes, most popular tunes to ever come out of this area, Isabel, right there from Bobby Houck and the Blue Dogs. Also, one of the great vocalists in sports is Gene Sapikoff. He joins us here at 1:33 on a Monday afternoon. What's up, my friend?
I've got to follow another fish story.
Yeah, it's the same one.
It's a good story.
Played
Played
the same story.
I didn't realize I played that one for you the last time you came on. That's my bad.
That's okay.
That's all right.
Well,
I thought you played it because we were going to be talking about the Marlins. Sorry about that.
That's exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well done. See, he's a good writer.
Yeah.
He can make that transition with Marlins and fish. Good job.
He's been doing this well with a PH. With a PH, yeah, no question. All right, Gene. So obviously the Marlins news is major news, and we're now in wait-and-see mode as we continue to gather more information and how this will affect the entire sport of Major League Baseball. But what was your initial takeaway when this broke this morning?
That I wasn't a bit surprised that something like that was going to happen eventually, and the question is going to be, how often is this going to happen? That is the huge question, because you can't tell me that NBA, MLB, NFL, all this stuff that you expected to get by without, losing entire position groups on teams, like almost happened to the Braves catchers already, or something like this. And so then what is the plan? Do you just go on and count these games as games not played? And what is the college football plan when a few teams in a given conference can't play for a couple of weeks, et cetera? Are you willing to do that? Or is it too squeamish to take and you're just going to say, hey, this is too much, let's just forget it?
Yeah, obviously this week is a big week for college football, especially pertaining to our neck of the woods, with the ACC presidents meeting on Wednesday. The SEC is meeting on Thursday. Maybe some announcements coming on Friday. Probably will get some. And we know, President Kaslan at South Carolina even spoke last week in a town hall in Columbia and said that they have been very focused, they as in this group of people, presidents, ADs, commissioners, and others, they've been really focused on the plan of Major League Baseball. So this information that has broken this morning, coming off of what I thought was a pretty good weekend for the sport of baseball, my goodness, ratings were through the roof and things like that. This information is critical for their decisions. If we walked into this morning without this information, how much has today's news changed maybe the thoughts of some of these folks?
It's really hard to tell, but I've got to believe that it's made them think that they should do what I've been thinking they should do, and that's kick the can down the road a little bit farther.
Yeah.
There is no reason you have to maintain this start on first weekend of September thing. Let's think about, maybe the third week of September and buy some time and see not just how baseball goes, but how the NBA, much more of a contact sport, how that goes. And I think that would really behoove the people planning both college football and the NFL.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I said that at the top of the show with Darren. I said I think it might be time to let's go ahead and announce a push back to the college football season. If you started it on September the 26th, that's 2 months from yesterday, Gene. That is ample time to get a larger sample size of the sports world and how this is affecting things.
Yeah, the scary thing is that, there's so much concern about COVID, ramping back up when it gets colder, that colleges, and University of South Carolina was one of the first to do this, starting their, winter break in November 7th or something like that. So that's a tough thing, but no one that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of SEC and ACC people, thinks that there's going to be a full 12-game regular season. So, and that's the people I've talked to just in the last few weeks. So you were going to have a shorter season anyway. I think there's more momentum building for the 8+1 or something like that. And you could do that just trying to really pack several games into the last week or two of September and getting done by mid-November or something like that. And, the only other teams that would be playing would be, of course, your postseason teams. I don't think there's going to be conventional bowl games this year. So you're really just talking about 4 or 8 playoff teams or whatever.
Gene Sapikoff's with us, 7-time South Carolina Sports Writer of the Year, including 2019. How about baseball? Because I know you're as connected with baseball as you are with college football and some of the other sports. Does baseball finish the season? And really, I mean, let's think more immediate. What about today, right? 2 games are canceled. Another one is scheduled to start at 3 or 4, and then a full slate tonight. And all we've heard from baseball since this news broke is one very generic, everyone is getting tested that's been associated with this. Are we going to hear more from baseball and Rob Manfred today? That's part 1. And part 2, are we going to finish the season?
Wow, I really did like the way baseball started from Thursday through last night. But and a lot of things were looking good, but it just takes a case like this, Darren, to really change things, because I thought, okay, they've got the 60-player pool thing. That is a lot of insurance. Things can really go well. But once you've got a lot of guys test, now you're going to bring in, like let's say 14 Marlins are out. Okay, you're going to bring 14 new guys out of that pool into the system. Well, now maybe you're exposing them, and then what are you going to keep doing? At some point, you run out of that 60-player pool, or you run out of catchers, say. That's why all these teams have, 6, 7, 8 catchers in this pool. This is really where the rubber meets the road, and I'm glad it's happened right away here to kind of let baseball, and of course, like you've already said, all the other sports observing this closely, find out exactly how this kind of thing works.
Yeah, Gene, is it fair to say that baseball is a guinea pig right now? Because I still am under this firm belief that college football is not going to cancel the season. They're going to find every way to do it, but now we're seeing the protocols and the guidelines and the standards that are put in place for sports like Major League Baseball, testing procedures and things of that nature. Is it fair to say that they've just been a guinea pig for other sports like football, which are planning to play at some point in time in the future, to be able to just adjust their models and move forward?
Yeah, with all due respect to the National Women's Soccer League, which has been going on, and soccer in, other countries, as far as the major U.S. professional sports, yeah, it's baseball. And then the way it's sort of graduated is almost just poetic, because then you have basketball with a little more contact, and then you have football with kind of the ultimate contact as a team sport. So way more obviously than NASCAR or golf or anything else that's going on in the major sports of America level. Baseball is the guinea pig, and it's going to be watched closely. And I'll bet the NBA is even going, wow, we're going to be bumping into each other a lot more than these baseball players. This is quite a concern.
Is there a way for baseball, for football, to have any type of bubble that's more secure than what they've got now, than anything closer to what the TBT or the professional basketball leagues or soccer is doing? I mean, is there any way with the travel and the games to do that?
And the other problem, Darren, is they just have so many more players.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to put 2 basketball teams in a hotel in Orlando, and that's like a total of 30 guys or something, and they've really cut back on the staffs too. So I don't even know, there's like 10 staff members per team or something like that. But baseball, I mean, first of all, you have to have at least 40 or 50 guys with this concern about substitutes and guys that are eventually going to get sick, and then there's trainers and coaches and stuff. So it would be really hard, maybe not impossible. The NHL is going to try to play out of 2 cities, right? I mean, that's going to be a model that perhaps baseball could have done, like, hey, we're going to play all our games in Seattle and Minneapolis or something. But they've chose not to do that for reasons that I'm sure they've studied. And we'll see how it goes. And it's interesting that all these sports have slightly different models.
Yeah.
On Twitter at Sapikoff. All right, Gene, it would have been a great day to wake up and actually look back at all of the fun that we had this weekend with baseball. The ratings were good. The cardboard cutouts were ugly, but they were neat. The video game like virtual fans, pumped in music and crowd noise and this, that, and the other. Chicago having to replace their foul pole after smoke knocked it down, all that type of stuff. Well, with the games that actually played this weekend, everybody did play 3 games. What were your main storylines in watching some of this?
Well, I think that we're going to have some thrilling races, especially with the added playoff dimension now of extra teams. And that in itself, wow, 8 3-game series with the top seed hosting all 3 games, that'll be cool. I think the Yankees are really going to be formidable. You get Stanton hitting like he's done already. And, I expect Judge and LeMahieu and all those guys to really come around. That's going to be some kind of team. I wouldn't count the Astros out yet. The A's look tough. What a difficult, sad outing for Shohei Ohtani, not recording an out in his first start in nearly 2 years. I was watching that yesterday against the A's, but there's just some serious balance already in baseball, except for maybe like the Dodgers and the Yankees. And I think that there's got to be all but a handful of teams that think they can make the playoffs, and that makes it truly exciting, which would make it really, really disappointing if this thing doesn't work out.
We saw a stat earlier today. I knew that the first 2 games were among the tightest in Major League Baseball history, with only 3 teams going 2-0. It's the first time since 1954 that nobody is 3-0. I mean, that speaks directly to your point of the parity and the basically all teams with a handful have a legitimate shot at half the league getting into the playoffs.
That's a terrific stat. I mean, that's just cool because, you get behind 3 games right away in a 60-game season, and it's a little deeper hole. But this is potentially tremendous fun. I like the runner on second. I think it's cool to start extra innings. And I really like not having to watch pitchers that haven't hit since they were 9 years old, since specialization starts so early in baseball these days, not having to hit. And does that mean I'm a communist too? I don't know, but it was going to be a cool season.
Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, it was just, I'll tell you what, man, it was just great to see the sport back this weekend. Did you have a major note or storyline as it pertained to this state? Obviously, there's a lot of kids in the big leagues that hail from the state of South Carolina, whether it's the Gamecocks, the Tigers, the College of Charleston, the Citadel, Coastal Carolina. Every one of them has representatives in the big leagues. Anything that is at top of mind for you?
I like Jackie Bradley Jr. flashing that leather and maybe going to hit a little bit better in Boston. He is going into a absolute walk free agent year, but his WAR has gone down 3 years in a row. So this is a huge year for him. I think he could just make a boatload of cash if he can have a really good year. And if he doesn't have such a good year, could really be at the crossroads of his career. So I'm keeping a close eye on him. And, I mean, there's so many guys. We talked a little bit about how, Justin Smoke, I think, fits really well into the Brewers situation, especially with the NLDH. And the Yankees pitchers, Jordan Montgomery, Clark Schmidt, I mean, I just picture those guys. I've thought since February they're going to be pitching in the postseason, meaningful postseason games, and I still think that.
Are they going to, at the end of the season, will there be an all-star team at the end of the season? Will they announce all-stars?
That I was thinking about, how about an all-star game after 30 games in, just a short break and it's just fun. At the end of the season there has to be some sort of all-star team, but I don't know what that means to be an all-star after even 60 games, but of course, there'll be Silver Slugger awards and things like that given out, so it'll be interesting to see.
Well, I guess if you really think about it, generally all-stars are selected after 81 games, so you're not far off. If you're an all-star after a 60-game season, in my opinion, you're still an all-star. Because go ahead.
And go to the baseball record books. Like in the early 60s, there for a while, they were playing 2 all-star games, one at the start of the season and one at the end. So I don't expect them to play an all-star game at the end, but you'd be a legitimate all-star after 60 games. I'll give you the legitimacy there, especially because, the last 30 of those would be pressure games, believe it or not.
No question.
It feels like I watched a lot of these games over the weekend, flipping through them all. It feels like there's pressure right now. You can even sense it with some of the local broadcasters. 60 games. Everyone's really adopting this whole sprint thing.
I think every win and loss equates to 2.7 wins or 2.7 losses.
That's
Did
correct.
You hear that?
That's correct.
Okay.
So there is the pressure that's there now.
And you nailed it, Darren, with your not since 1954, opening series sweep thing. I think teams were just, paranoid about getting swept. There's certain teams that the psyche would have been absolutely rattled had they gone 0-3. And, it's a good thing nobody did, but hey, somebody could be, 1-8 here pretty soon, but we'll see.
How about your perception of, we mentioned the cardboard fans and the virtual fans and the pumped in audio. I'm on record. I like the audio. I could do without the rest, but what are your thoughts on the production from the various networks?
Better than I thought it would be. I've got to say that. And here's a couple things. Number one, on the pumped in audio, let's put a fan in control of some of that so that when there's a bad call, they hit the booze.
You get the MLB app. They have this game. So you go, if you got the MLB app, you probably do. You open up the scoreboard, and then at the very bottom of the scoreboard, the full day scoreboard is this little link that says you can cheer. So you can clap, you can cheer, and you can boo.
I like it.
I messed around with it a lot, but I never really felt that my input was being used in the audio I was hearing, but I played with it.
I like it. And as far as the cardboard fans, I don't know. It's kind of cool. You could pay to have yourself there, pay to have your pet in there. What I did like, I felt bad for Ohtani because he just seems like a really cool, humble, classy guy. But as he's walking off the mound, the PA system in Oakland is playing Born to Be Wild after he gives up 4 runs without recording an out. So, hey, we're still going after people.
And players are going after players. The Brewers and Cubs were a little bit feisty, and there was an article that followed that saying it's because while there's piped in sound, you can hear everything being said between the dugouts. So, if I'm sitting here talking to trash about you, Gene, to JB in the dugout, you can hear it over in the first base side.
Right.
And I heard some of the NBA guys saying that they think there's going to be a lot more technicals because just under your breath comments are going to be heard so much easier by the refs. So they're going to either have to be able to have thicker skins, those NBA refs, or we're going to have a lot more guys shooting free throws with nobody else standing at the free throw line. So.
Yeah, and a lot of 5-10 second tape delay on these broadcasts to make sure they can exclude some of the language from your television screen. Real quick, from Jeff Passan, the Baltimore Orioles returning home from Miami tonight, and that means tomorrow's game is also not going to be played at Marlins Park. But at some point, the Marlins are expected to travel to Baltimore, where they're scheduled to play Wednesday and Thursday. So those games are still on the schedule. No makeup games announced yet. All right, so, Gene, let me move to football. Tony Barnhart, he's part of that clique that you're in, you and Tony and Paul and all these guys that we have to watch on TV.
I wouldn't put myself up there with Mr. College Football, but okay. If you want to, I'll accept that for several seconds.
Okay, all right. Well, we refer to you around here as Mr. Gene. So Mr. Gene, his report just a few days ago about the presidents in the ACC meeting Wednesday to discuss this trio of options. One is the least likely, but it's still their first option, which is, of course, to play the whole year. The second is that 11-game season with 10 conference games and a non-con. And then the third, of course, will be the 9-game schedule with 8 conference games and then 1 non-con, which, of course, would preserve like Clemson, Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky games like that. All of that, though, is including Notre Dame in a 15-team league and doing away with divisional play and choosing the top 2 teams in the ACC to play in the championship game. Is that fair?
Everything's fair in 2020 as sports. You're trying to do the best. It's going to be weird. There's almost no league where things are the same. For instance, you're the Yankees or the Dodgers, and you just proved that you're by far the best. You've spent a lot of money on your roster, and you completely kick butt. You've got to play a 3-game series against, relatively speaking, teams that just shouldn't be there with you. And, hey, they've got a couple hot pitchers, and you're out. That's not fair. Traditionally, historically, conventionally. So there's going to be college football stuff. Notre Dame in the ACC would be weirdly fun for 1 year. Probably make it tougher for Clemson. I mean, you want to, play them in an ACC championship game with a college football playoff bid on the line there. I mean, I suppose there's a way they both could make it if they're undefeated at that time, but I don't know. yeah, it's probably not fair, but understandable.
Well, that's where I was going with this, because right now Clemson is scheduled to travel to South Bend, Indiana, in the middle of the season to play the Irish. So if those two, which if this comes into play and Notre Dame is a part of the ACC on a 1-year basis, those are clearly the two. Regardless of the fact they play each other in the regular season, they're clearly the top two teams to play a second game in the ACC championship game. And I mentioned to Darren earlier, Gene, when you look at the SEC, let's say you take the 4 teams you think have the best shot to make it to the title game: Alabama, Texas A&M, Florida, Georgia. You go to the Big Ten. You got Ohio State, Penn State, maybe Michigan, a couple others you might want to throw them in there with Wisconsin. I don't know. You go to the Big 12, Oklahoma, Texas. You go to the Pac-12. Oregon, maybe Southern Cal. Definitely those are the top 2, I think, as people see it in the Pac-12. In the ACC as it stands today is Clemson, and then there's nobody else. So this actually would put up a true hurdle for the Tigers to make it back to the college football playoff.
No doubt about it. It would be a likely scenario where they play Notre Dame twice, because Notre Dame would be considered an ACC game, as you said, when they were scheduled to play them in October. So then they play them again. It's almost like right now, just thinking about it, hard to imagine somebody sweeping that. But if one of the two teams did, it would be Clemson. I think they're cut above Notre Dame, but actually quite a bit. And it'd be interesting if Clemson were to lose, like on some cold, blustery day in South Bend, and come back and get them in Charlotte. Clemson could certainly afford a loss in that situation. But, in a shorter season, there'd also be more undefeated teams by almost certain mathematical definition. So the old computer poll thing is going to really come into play. And you talk about unfair. Some team's going to slip in at 4, maybe even at 3, that you're just like, wait a minute, who did they play? So it'll be fascinating.
Yeah, unfair would also maybe be a good term for teams like North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Miami going, hey, wait a second. We're in the Coastal, and we have a chance to win this thing and play Clemson in the ACC championship, and you're just going to drop Notre Dame on us? Wait a second here.
Yeah, especially if let's say, just for the sake of argument, Pitt, and they have a veteran quarterback in Kenny Pickett. Let's say they just have like their best year ever. This is our dream year, and they don't get in, and then they lose all these guys to the NFL or whatever. Yeah, that would be tough to take. But for the average fan out there, Notre Dame Clemson in ACC championship game sounds a lot better than any ACC championship game matchup I've seen in several years. So
Absolutely,
that's pretty cool.
All right, you got less than a minute here. I want people to read the column, but quickly, this is really well done by you. We talk about the Power 5 impacts. How about the impact at Coastal Carolina if 2020 is not played?
Well, I just feel so bad for them. Talking to their athletic director, Matt Hogue, Jamie, they're going to play at South Carolina. That game's almost certainly out. That's $1.4 million to a school that has a total of a $25.5 million budget for their whole athletic department. They have a home game against Kansas and Les Miles, national championship winner, Cumba to Conway. That's almost certainly out. And then they have very attractive home games against App State and Georgia Southern, which bring a lot of fans. Who knows what's going to happen with these group of 5 schools, not to mention Jamie Chadwell is recruited well and has a good-looking team coming back. So much on the line for the Chanticleers, and they just epitomize what's going on right now in college sports.
It is available at postandcourier.com. It's a wonderful column. I would suggest you read it. All right, Gene, what's in the paper this week?
Well, first of all, we got David Cloninger doing a lot of cool stuff all over the board, but particularly, on baseball, a lot of changes coming to scholarship limitations, not to the 11.7, which everybody has had disdain for decades, but a new rule that will allow, non-athletic grants to count as baseball scholarships, and he's going to kind of explain that via the University of South Carolina perspective, but applies to all the schools, really. And I'm going to have something suggesting some candidates for ACC commissioner, and I'll just say that there's never been better timing for a diversity candidate with some tremendous candidates to replace the great John Swofford as ACC commissioner.
Fantastic. Always well done by Gene Sapikoff. Thank you so much, my friend. Hopefully this week gets back on the road at some point in time, and we, keep heading in the right direction. But as always, we'll be picking up the paper and reading all about it from the tip of your pen. Gene, thanks, bud.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Always
See you, man.
on Twitter at Sapikoff. Real quick before we run today, what day is today? It's everybody's favorite segment that we're going to squeeze into about 45 seconds here. If you know anybody from up there, wonderful. Happy National New Jersey Day.
Oh, I got tons of family in New Jersey.
Okay, well, to all of you listening, enjoy it with a bottle of scotch because it's also National Scotch Day.
I think my family does like scotch as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is also National Creme Brulee Day. Are you a creme brulee fan?
Not as much as I am a scotch fan.
Yeah, I'm neither, really. Creme brulee is all right. And it is also National Love is Kind Day. So be kind, be loving to somebody.
Love is kind?
That's what they say.
I mean, that might be the dumbest day we've had. Obviously, love is kind. It's love.
Yeah, well, there's tough love.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I don't know. Just saying. Just saying. There you go. Wanted to make sure we squeeze those in before we get out of here. Thanks as always to Darren Goldwater for his hard work.
Thank you, man.
And thanks to
driving the show.
No question. And thanks to Gene Sapikoff and Lawton Swan for joining us as well. Back tomorrow at noon. Enjoy some baseball today. Hopefully, we'll have it for another couple months, but we'll see. Until then, we're out of here. Have a marvelous Monday. See you tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show.